Hi viewers, Purple Celery here. Welcome back to my channel. Now that Doctor Who Flux is finished, I thought that I would do a video which takes an overall look at the series as a whole. So I guess this is a Flux Redux. Anyway, let's get into it. Firstly, I just want to give Chris Chibnall and the BBC props for trying something different. New Who has never had a big six-parter series before, so I do give them credit for trying something a bit different. Having said that though, I had some issues with Doctor Who Flux. I felt that Flux had some flaws, and at the risk of sounding like a Monday morning quarterback, I want to discuss the issues that I had with it and what I would personally do differently if I was lucky enough to be in the position of Chris Chibnall. The first issue that I had with Flux was that it was kind of overstuffed. It dealt with like a lot of very complex and convoluted science fiction concepts. Now, there is nothing wrong with that per se. There have been some great TV series out there which do deal with a lot of complicated science fiction plots. For example, we had Lost in the noughties. More recently, we also had the German Netflix series Dark. Both shows were, I thought anyway, done really well, but they also dealt with some very, mind-bendy sci-fi concepts. However, in order to get away with that, I think there's two things that you need to do in general. The first is to let the series breathe. Give the viewers room to digest what's going on. Give them room to catch up, basically. With Doctor Who Flux, I felt that it moved so fast, like the pace was really fast, and it jumped around so much that there were several times where I, as a viewer, just felt left behind with everything that was going on. The second thing that I think that you need to do in order to make a complex sci-fi show work is to give us really interesting and compelling characters. For example, with Lost you had the character of Sawyer, who was this very selfish, egocentric con artist, but he was also quite funny and charming. Also with Dark you had, for example, the character of Jonas, who was a 16-year-old trying to come to grips with his father's sudden death. You also had the character of Claudia, who on the surface seemed like a rather cold, callous, career-oriented woman who didn't really have much time for her nerdy teenage daughter. But then as the series went on and you got to know Claudia, you saw just how intelligent and how resourceful she was, and how much in fact she actually did love her daughter. With Doctor Who Flux, however, I just felt that there were a few too many bland characters. In particular, I didn't really get much out of Bel and Vinda. The Doctor, Dan and Yaz were fine, Karvanista was fine. Professor Jericho in particular I thought worked really well. And I think that that's because he was, I guess he had like layers to him. When you first met the Professor, he was kind of this, older, slightly pompous, scientific kind of a guy. And then as you got to know him, the layers were peeled back and you saw just how, I guess, what a decent person he was at heart. And his badass boast before he died was awesome. So I guess I liked Professor Jericho because on the surface he seemed like a certain stereotype, but then that stereotype was in fact subverted as the series went on. The second issue that I had with Flux was kind of related. There were too many plots and subplots going on, and I think in stuffing so many plots into the series, it kind of lost its core, its heart. I mean, what was Flux actually about? If I was to ask you, the viewer, to describe Flux to me in 50 words or less, what would you say? Because personally, I'm struggling to do so. When you think about all the plots that were in Flux, we had, for example, number one, the whole existential threat of the Flux. Number two, you had the revenge plot with Swarm and Azure. Number three, you had the whole invasion storyline with the Grand Serpent and the Sontarans. Number four, you even had the whole pursuit plot where Division was trying to capture the Doctor. And possibly there was like a fifth plot, or more of a subplot, this one, with the whole love story between Bel and Vinda. Now, I feel like any one of those plots in itself would have worked really well, but trying to cram all of them into the one series just made it feel really unfocused. For example, if I was in Chibnall's shoes, I would have focused maybe on, one or two plots. I mean, he could have done something great with the whole existential threat of the Flux. In the first review that I did of Flux, the Halloween Apocalypse, I mentioned how the Flux reminded me of the Neverending Story, or specifically the nothing in the Neverending Story. I think the Flux could have worked in a similar fashion. You had like a great concept here of it basically obliterating worlds and universes. It could have been a metaphor for loss, for absence, for the absence of stability and peace. But I felt like the Flux didn't really get the focus that it deserved. And I think doing so, that just made the whole overall story feel quite unbalanced. The third main issue that I had with Flux was that ultimately there were too many unanswered questions. For example, I'm still a bit confused about the whole deal between space versus time. I also don't know why Azure was basically hiding out in the body of a human-looking woman. I also don't know what the deal was with the Grand Serpent, why he was trying to infiltrate UNIT and take over the Earth. I mean, was he just an opportunist, or was there a deeper reason for that? I also don't know what Swarm and Azure wanted with Diane, why they kidnapped Diane. And the big one, how much of the universe is actually left now that the Flux has obliterated a lot of it? Now, I know that some people might be watching this thinking, oh, well, I'm sure that the answers to some of those questions, if not all those questions, will be revealed in the specials. To me, that's a bit of a cop-out. Flux should have been self-contained. I feel like we shouldn't have to wait until the specials to get these answers. Now, I have heard around the internet that potentially Chris Chibnall was told during the production of Flux that he would be getting less episodes than anticipated, and this could have been due partly to COVID. So Chibnall may or may not have been told that his production time was more limited. If that's the case, I do feel sympathetic towards him. I imagine that would have been quite a stressful situation, trying to scramble to fit more episodes into less, per se. And I feel like if Chibnall had, say, 7 or 8 or 10 episodes to play around with, that might have resolved some of the issues that I had with Flux. For a start, it would definitely have given the story more room to breathe and slowed the pacing down a bit. However, I don't think that it would have resolved the whole issue of stuffing too many plot threads into the one story. I still think that it would have been a bit unfocused. However, this isn't going to be a total whinge fest. There were many things that I did enjoy about Flux. Namely, Carvanista and the Lupari. I thought that was such a breath of fresh air. It was like a new species that we hadn't seen before. I really liked the whole concept of each Lupari being soul bonded to a particular human. Carvanista in particular was awesome. I also liked the special effects in Doctor Who Flux. In particular, I thought that Swarm and Azure, their appearance was really striking. So the people who did the makeup and the costumes and the set design and everything and the special effects did like a great job. I also couldn't complain about Yaz and Dan in this series. I liked Dan a lot. Yaz, I thought, had some fairly good character development. It was clear that after travelling with the Doctor for so long, she's picked up a few tricks of the trade. It was also great to see the Ruth Doctor again, even just for a short while. Also great to learn more about UNIT. Overall, however, I did struggle a little bit with Flux. I feel like Flux will be appreciated most by people who like their sci-fi plot-driven rather than character-driven. And I think too, it'd be appreciated the most by real hardcore fans of Doctor Who, the purists. I think that the casual viewers and the kids are going to struggle with Flux a little bit, which is kind of sad in a way, because to me Doctor Who has always been a family show. It's always been partly at least for the kids. But I just feel like, any person, I think, under 10 or 12 is probably going to struggle a little bit with flux. Anyway, these are just my thoughts, so thank you for listening. I am always open to hearing opposing and contrary views. So, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. If you've liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, not just this video, but over the last few weeks. Your views and support do mean a great deal to me. And I shall be back shortly after New Year's Day to review the New Year's Day special. Until then, this is Purple Celery over and out. Thanks again for watching.